Welcome back to my channel. Today we delve into one of the most shocking and emotionally explosive storylines ever to rock the world of the bold and the beautiful. A secret buried for years, a revelation that could destroy families, tear lovers apart, and pit generations against each other has come to light with devastating consequences. It all begins with a tragedy and spirals into a war over blood, love, and betrayal that no one in the Forrester or Logan families will be able to escape unscathed. It started with what seemed like an ordinary accident, a sudden medical emergency that sent young Douglas to the hospital. Panic gripped the Forrester family when the doctors declared he needed an urgent blood transfusion. Thomas, frantic and guilt-ridden over the accident that put his son in this critical condition, rushed to volunteer as a donor. But what was supposed to be a simple act of paternal duty turned into the first crack in a web of deception that had lasted nearly a decade. When Thomas's blood was tested, it didn't match Douglas's. Not just incompatible, completely and undeniably incorrect. The results were clear. Thomas could not possibly be Douglas's biological father. Staggered, confused, and consumed by a rising storm of anxiety, Thomas initially believed it had to be a mistake. But even as he tried to deny the truth, his mind raced through possibilities. It wasn't until he recalled his mother's rare blood type, shared with Douglas, that the awful reality began to emerge. A sick feeling crept into his chest as the horrifying puzzle started to piece itself together. He made a desperate call to Taylor, who had been abroad attending a medical conference, begging her to return immediately and donate blood. Taylor, upon hearing Douglas's condition, agreed without hesitation and raced to the hospital. Meanwhile, Brooke, who had come to the hospital for a routine checkup, lingered in the corridor outside the pediatric unit, concerned for the child she had once considered her grandson. She didn't expect to overhear the whispered, urgent conversation between Taylor and Thomas, nor did she expect to witness Taylor's pale face and trembling voice as she admitted that Douglas was not Thomas's son. Brooke froze. Her heart thundered in her chest, and the air seemed to thin as she struggled to comprehend what she had just heard. A bombshell decades in the making had detonated before her eyes. Inside the hospital room, after the successful transfusion and Douglas's stabilization, Taylor could no longer avoid the truth. Under Thomas's intense questioning, she finally broke down and confessed that years ago, during one of Ridge's short-lived separations from Brooke, the two of them had reconnected in a brief, passionate night filled with regret and longing. She had discovered she was pregnant shortly afterward, but chose to remain silent when Ridge and Brooke reunited. Her silence was not born of malice, she explained, but of fear that she would once again lose Ridge, fear that Brooke would never forgive her, fear that Ridge would be torn in a way that would destroy them all. So she let everyone believe Douglas was Thomas's son, especially after Caroline's death, using the situation to justify the deception. The web had been spun so intricately that even Taylor had convinced herself it was better this way. But now there was no way to bury the truth. Thomas, enraged and betrayed, stormed out of the hospital, leaving Taylor sobbing. Brooke, still reeling from what she had overheard, confronted Taylor directly. Her fury was volcanic. The woman who had once been her romantic rival had kept her husband's child a secret for years, and now that child had grown up believing a lie. Brooke's eyes blazed with hurt, not just for Ridge, but for herself, for the years she spent loving and defending a family built on a foundation that never truly existed. Taylor tried to explain, to reason, but Brooke was beyond consolation. The fallout was immediate. Brooke raced home to confront Ridge, who had no idea what had just unraveled. He was devastated, not only by the fact that he had a son he never knew about, but also by the knowledge that Taylor had deliberately kept this truth from him. The betrayal cut deep. Ridge, still emotionally tied to Brooke, but having recently rebuilt fragile trust with Taylor, found himself once again pulled into a storm of divided loyalties. As the news spread, Forrester Creations descended into turmoil. Ridge, who had just regained control of the company, was thrown off balance, and the personal crisis quickly spilled into the professional realm. Hope, who had grown deeply attached to Douglas, found herself terrified that she would lose the child she considered her own. She had legally adopted him with Thomas's consent, but now that Ridge was revealed to be the true biological father, the entire foundation of the custody agreement was up for debate. Ridge, heartbroken and unsure, demanded time to process, but Taylor pushed for immediate action. She believed Ridge should claim full parental rights over Douglas and remove him from the toxic environment created by Hope and Brooke. Thomas, on the other hand, refused to let go of his parental bond, despite knowing the truth. He insisted that he was still Douglas's real father in every way that mattered. The Logan-Forrester feud ignited with a vengeance. Brooke was adamant that Ridge had no right to disrupt the life Douglas had known, especially when Ridge had never been there as a father. Hope doubled down, prepared to fight in court if necessary to maintain custody. Taylor retaliated, rallying legal support and dragging Brooke's past scandals into the spotlight to undermine her credibility as a guardian. What began as a family crisis soon became a legal war, with depositions, secret recordings, and betrayal after betrayal emerging like landmines along a battlefield of emotional devastation. Donna and Katie were drawn in, each choosing sides as the Forrester and Logan clans once again fractured under the weight of lies and half-truths. Eric, weakened and weary, pleaded for unity, but even his influence couldn't stop the inevitable implosion. The media caught wind of the drama, thanks to a leak from within the company, rumored to be from someone in Sheila's circle, who saw this as the perfect moment to destabilize the Forresters further. Through all of this, Douglas remained in the eye of the storm. Confused and frightened, he didn't understand why everyone was suddenly fighting over him. The adults around him tried to shield him, but their own chaos bled through. He started to withdraw, retreating into silence, struggling to understand why the man he called Dad was no longer his real father, and why his world was changing so drastically. Hope's heartbreak grew deeper as she watched the little boy she had raised become more distant with each passing day. Ridge, tormented, began to visit Douglas secretly, trying to bond with him. At first, Douglas was resistant, confused by the sudden connection, but slowly he started asking questions, and Ridge answered them with as much honesty as he could muster. Their bond, though fragile, began to form. Meanwhile, Thomas slipped into emotional instability again, his anger toward his mother, his father, and even hope simmering beneath a surface that threatened to explode at any moment. In a stunning twist, Carter, the legal advisor for Forrester Creations, discovered documents suggesting that Thomas may have forged paperwork years ago regarding the adoption agreement between himself and Hope. If proven true, the legality of the entire arrangement would be nullified, placing Douglas squarely in Ridge's custody and, by extension, in Taylor's influence. Carter, torn between his loyalty to the Forresters and his sense of justice, struggled with whether or not to bring this to light. But when pressed by Brooke, he made a choice, and the documents were filed in court. The custody trial that followed was one of the most explosive events in recent soap opera history. Secrets spilled out in testimony after testimony: Taylor's concealment of paternity, Thomas's erratic behavior, Brooke's manipulation of past situations, and even Ridge's history of walking out on both families. The judge, overwhelmed by the emotional intensity of the case, called for a recess and appointed an independent child advocate to interview Douglas and recommend a final placement. The future of the boy hung in the balance. In the end, the child advocate recommended a shared custody arrangement with Ridge and Hope under the supervision of an external counselor. Neither side was satisfied. Taylor believed Douglas was being robbed of a stable father-son bond, while Brooke feared Ridge's re-entry into Douglas's life would only reopen old wounds. Ridge, for his part, was torn, grateful to know the truth, but uncertain whether reclaiming the past was worth destroying the present. As the dust settled, one truth remained: no one escaped unscathed. The revelation that Ridge was Douglas's biological father didn't just alter birth certificates, it shattered illusions, ripped open old scars, and reignited rivalries that had been simmering beneath the surface for decades. And as always in the bold and the beautiful, the price of secrets was paid in heartbreak, tears, and battles yet to come. Because in this world, the past is never buried. And the truth, once unearthed, always demands its due.